coffee in the blue ceramic mug, a reminder of normalcy while I gathered bank statements and location data. Justice requires a steady hand and an organized mind. But let me start from the beginning. It was almost midnight when the tablet screen caught my eye. I'd been working late finalizing quarterly reports in my home office, when our shared device lit up with a calendar notification. Prenatal checkup, 10 a.m. glowed in soft blue against the dark screen. Something about the date made my stomach clench. I picked up the tablet, my finger hovering over the notification. The timestamp showed it had been added 3 weeks ago. That wasn't what bothered me. It was the appointment date itself, scheduled for 16 weeks into the pregnancy. I ran the numbers backward, comparing them against my travel schedule from 4 months ago. The week Ariana claimed conception happened, I'd been in Seattle for a conference. The coffee I'd been drinking turned bitter in my mouth. I set my mug down carefully, the ceramic making a soft click against the desk's wooden surface. Remember when you were a kid, and the teacher would hand back test results face down? That's how this felt. That moment before you flip the paper when you already know something's wrong. I opened my laptop and pulled up my bank statements. The evidence appeared like Connect 4 pieces dropping into place. Hotel charges in neighborhoods I'd never visited, rideshare receipts to unfamiliar addresses, restaurant bills for 2 at times I'd been working late. All charged to our joint account, hidden in plain sight among legitimate expenses. My hands were steady as I created a new folder on my desktop. I labeled it Truth, not betrayal or evidence or any of the angry words burning in my mind. Just truth. Because that's what mattered now. The truth would be my compass through whatever storm was coming. I worked methodically, taking screenshots of each transaction, noting dates and times in a separate spreadsheet. The pattern emerged clearly. Regular Wednesday meetups, always between 2 p.m. and 5 p.m. Weekend trips disguised as girls' nights. Each piece of data felt like handling broken glass, sharp edges that cut, but necessary to collect. The sound of Ariana's laughter drifted up from downstairs. She was on the phone, probably in the kitchen. Her voice carried that light, carefree tone I used to love. Now it scraped against my ears like sandpaper. I heard her say, "Yes, absolutely," to whoever was on the other end, followed by more laughter. I stared at the folder on my screen, then at the printed copies I'd carefully arranged in a manila envelope. The documentation was incomplete. I knew that. But it was enough to start with. Enough to prove I wasn't crazy. Enough to show that while I'd been building our life together, she'd been constructing an elaborate lie. My coffee had gone cold. The house felt too quiet now that Ariana's call had ended. I sat there gripping the folder, feeling the weight of paper that somehow contained the collapse of my marriage. The question wasn't whether I would confront her. That was inevitable. The question was how to do it in a way that protected my future from the mess she'd created. In the darkness of my office, surrounded by proof of betrayal, I heard her footsteps on the stairs. They paused at the landing, then continued down the hallway toward our bedroom. The sound of each step felt like a countdown to a conversation that would change everything. 2 nights later, I sat across from Ariana at our dining room table, the binder of evidence tucked beside my chair. The lasagna she'd made, always her go-to for important conversations, sat untouched between us. The scent of garlic bread reminded me of happier announcements we'd shared here, celebrations that hadn't been built on lies. "Honey," she said, her smile bright as polished chrome, "I have wonderful news." She reached across the table for my hand. I kept mine firmly in my lap. "We're pregnant." The word "we" hit like a slap. I reached down, lifted the binder, and placed it on the table between us. The thud it made wasn't loud, but it shattered her rehearsed moment. "What's this?" Her tone stayed light, but her eyes darted to the thickness of the folder. Bank statements, hotel receipts, rideshare logs. I opened to the first tab, sliding out the timeline I'd constructed. "The dates don't match, Ariana, not even close. You've been investigating me?" Her voice pitched higher. "Going through our accounts, tracking my movements?" She pushed back from the table. "Do you realize how controlling that sounds?" "Don't." My voice came out quiet but firm. "Don't try to make this about me. But it is about you." She stood up, pacing behind her chair. You're so caught up in your spreadsheets and your precious evidence that you can't see what's important. This baby needs stability. A real home. The baby needs truth, I said. And Logan Pike's name on the birth certificate. She froze. I watched the calculation flash across her face before she switched tactics. Oh, honey. Her voice softened to silk. I know this must be painful. You've always wanted to be a father. Stop. I laid my palms flat on the table. This isn't about my feelings about fatherhood. This is about you trying to trap me into raising another man's child. Trap you? She laughed, but it held an edge. I'm trying to save our marriage, to give us both what we want. What I want, I said, standing slowly, are clear boundaries. Starting now. I met her gaze steadily. No signatures on any documents. No access to my accounts. And we're sleeping in separate rooms until this is legally resolved. You can't be serious. Her smile was gone now, replaced by something harder. You'd abandon your pregnant wife? You abandoned this marriage the moment you chose to lie. I closed the binder, tucking it under my arm. I'm not responsible for fixing what you broke. Ariana's fork clattered against her plate as she slammed it down. Her eyes narrowed to green slits, and when she spoke, her voice carried a blade's edge of threat. You'll regret making me do this alone. Morning light filtered through the hallway window, casting long shadows across the hardwood floor. I'd barely slept, spending most of the night reorganizing my evidence and searching for any gaps in the timeline. The sound of footsteps made me tense as I stepped out of the guest room. Ariana stood there in her favorite morning robe, the one with tiny blue flowers I'd given her last Christmas. Her eyes were red-rimmed, makeup carefully applied to look natural, but vulnerable. I recognized the setup. She'd always been skilled at crafting moments. I couldn't sleep, she said softly, wrapping her arms around herself. I kept thinking about everything. About us. She took a tentative step closer. Maybe we could talk. The nursery furniture was delivered yesterday. I stayed where I was, maintaining the distance. The furniture needs to go back. Please, Bronson. Her voice wavered. Just help me set up the crib. We can figure everything else out later, but... She gestured to her still flat stomach. This baby is coming, whether you're ready or not. I kept my phone pressed against my leg, the recording app already running. You mean Logan's baby is coming? Her face flickered between masks, hurt, denial, calculation. Finally, she sighed. Logan isn't... He's not ready to be a dad. He made that clear. She stepped closer, reaching for my arm. But you've always wanted children. You'd be such an amazing father. Got it. I shifted back, breaking contact. I won't raise another man's child under a lie. It wouldn't be a lie. Frustration cracked through her careful composure. We're married. The baby would have your name, your protection. Logan doesn't even want... She caught herself, but too late. I stopped the recording and slipped the phone into my pocket. I think we're done here. Back in the guest room, I pulled up Miles Hart's number. We'd been friends since college before he became one of the city's sharpest family lawyers. He picked up on the second ring. Miles, I need your help. My voice sounded steady, even as my free hand clenched. My wife's pregnant. Not mine. Jesus, Bronson. A pause, then the familiar click of his office door closing. Tell me everything. I laid it out systematically, the discovery, the confrontation, the evidence I'd gathered. When I mentioned the recording from that morning, he cut in sharply. You have her explicitly stating it's not your child? Yes. And that Logan Pike's the father, but isn't ready to be a dad. Good, that's crucial. Papers shuffled on his end. But Bronson, we need to move fast. Are you sitting down? Something in his tone made my grip tighten on the phone. What aren't you telling me? There's a legal doctrine called paternity presumption. If Ariana gives birth while you're still married, the court automatically considers you the father, regardless of biology. His voice hardened with urgency. And once that presumption kicks in, it's nearly impossible to reverse. You'd be legally and financially responsible for that child for the next 18 years. The room seemed to tilt slightly. How long do we have? From the dates you mentioned? Maybe 6 months before she delivers? We need to file for legal separation immediately. Get court orders blocking your name from any birth documents. More shuffling. I can be at my office in 30 minutes. Bring everything you've got. I looked at the binder on the desk, then at the wedding photo still hanging on the wall. The smiling faces felt like strangers now. I'll be there in 45. Miles's office felt like a fortress of mahogany and law books, the kind of place where life-changing decisions got made behind closed doors. He studied the contents of my binder, his expression growing grimmer with each page. This is methodical work, Bronson. He tapped the hotel receipts. But we need to move faster than I thought. Ariana's already setting up a narrative. The devoted wife, the expectant mother. You as the controlling husband who won't accept reality. I remembered the calculated vulnerability in her eyes that morning. She's good at stories. Courts love stories, Miles said, reaching for his laptop. But they respect evidence more. First step, we file for legal separation today. That starts the clock on asset division and puts the court on notice about paternity. My stomach nodded. How fast can we move? I've got emergency motions ready. His fingers flew across the keyboard. We'll freeze joint accounts immediately. That stops her from draining shared resources. Then we file an injunction preventing your name from being added to any birth records without explicit court approval. I watched him work, the familiar ache in my chest wrestling with a new sense of purpose. The law office's coffee maker hummed in the corner, reminding me of countless morning routines now shattered. What about the house, I asked. Stay there for now, Miles advised, still typing. Moving out could be seen as abandonment. But document everything, every conversation, every interaction. Keep recording when you legally can. 2 hours later, we'd filed everything. I stared at the stack of signed papers, each one a brick in the wall between my old life and whatever came next. Remember, Miles said as I stood to leave, she's going to react badly to these filings. Stay calm, stay factual, don't engage emotionally. He was right. I found Ariana in the kitchen that evening, holding court papers with trembling hands. How dare you? Her voice cracked like thin ice. Freezing our accounts? Filing for separation? I'm carrying a child. You're carrying Logan Pike's child, I corrected quietly, maintaining distance across the kitchen island, and trying to trap me into raising it. Trap you? She slammed the papers down. I'm trying to save our family. This baby needs a father. A real father, not some man who isn't ready for responsibility. I won't raise another man's child under a lie. I repeated, the words familiar now. That's not family, Ariana. That's fraud. You're just afraid. She spat, color rising in her cheeks. Afraid of being a father. Afraid of commitment. I should have seen it sooner. The only commitment I'm afraid of is the one you tried to forge without my consent. She grabbed the papers, crumpling them. You think you're so righteous with your evidence and your lawyers? Just wait. I'll make sure the court sees who you really are. The bedroom door slammed hard enough to rattle pictures on the wall. Through the wood, I heard her voice, muffled but sharp with threat. I'll make sure the court sees who you really are. The next morning, I started my evidence sweep wider and deeper. My financial background taught me to follow patterns: money, movement, communications. They all leave traces if you know where to look. Our shared cloud account became a gold mine. Ariana had forgotten to disable location sharing on her phone months ago. I downloaded her GPS data, mapping out regular meetups at the Riverside Hotel. Every Tuesday and Thursday, like clockwork, for the past 4 months. The timestamps matched perfectly with those mysterious rideshare receipts. You know that hollow feeling when suspicions transform into certainties? When I overlaid her location data with the hotel charges, it was like watching a movie I never wanted to see. The texts were harder to stomach. Our phone plan's online portal held message records, hundreds between her number and Logan Pike's. I remembered summer evenings on our back deck, the scent of grilled steaks in the air, while she'd been messaging him right there at our table. My hands shook as I printed the logs. Documentation is protection, I muttered, organizing everything into labeled folders. It was something my father used to say about contracts. Never thought I'd apply it to my marriage. 3 days into my investigation, I hit the mother lode. The prenatal clinic's patient portal showed activity I never authorized. Someone had created an account using my email, an old one I rarely checked. Inside, I found appointment confirmations, insurance submissions, and a digital intake form with my signature. Except it wasn't my signature. I pulled up an old mortgage document with my real signature for comparison. The forge was good, damn good. But the loop in the S was too perfect, too practiced. The real me always rushed that part. The timestamp on the forged consent form, 3:47 p.m. yesterday. My stomach churned. She was moving faster than we'd thought, trying to lock everything down before the legal separation took effect. I printed the forged form, holding it under my desk lamp. The careful strokes felt like a knife to my gut. How many times had she practiced my signature? How long had she planned this? My phone buzzed. Unknown number. Mr. Sanders? A woman's crisp voice. This is Angela from Dr. Randall Keene's office at Central Valley Diagnostics. We've noticed some concerning irregularities in recent clinic submissions under your name. Dr. Keene would like to speak with you directly. My heart pounded. What kind of irregularities? I apologize, but Dr. Keene needs to discuss this personally. How soon can you come in? I glanced at the forged form on my desk, then at my watch. I can be there in 30 minutes. Perfect. Dr. Keene will see you right away. Please bring photo ID and any relevant documentation you might have. As I gathered my files, another text from Ariana lit up my phone. Signed us up for parenting classes. Time to step up and be the man I know you can be. My phone vibrated again. Dr. Keene's office calling back. Whatever they'd found in those records, it was serious enough for an immediate meeting. I grabbed my keys and the evidence binder, knowing the next few hours could change everything. Dr. Keene's office had that clinical sterility that usually made me uneasy, but today it felt like neutral ground. The silver-haired doctor adjusted his glasses as he studied the documents spread across his desk. Every few seconds he'd pause to make a note, his pen scratching against paper in the quiet room. Remember when you were a kid and the principal called you to the office? That same tension hung in the air, except this time I knew I wasn't the one in trouble. Mr. Sanders? Dr. Keene finally looked up, his expression grave. I've been practicing medicine for 28 years. Patient confidentiality and proper documentation are the bedrock of what we do. He tapped the form in front of him. This signature, purportedly yours, authorized genetic testing under your insurance plan. When did you last visit our clinic? Never, Dr. Keene. I've never been here before today. He nodded slowly. That's what our records indicated. Yet someone used your insurance information and forged your signature for several procedures. He pulled out another document, including this consent form dated 3 days ago. My jaw clenched. I could feel the muscle ticking there, but I kept my voice steady. May I see it? The paper felt heavy in my hands. That same perfect loop in the S stared back at me. That's not my signature. No, Dr. Keene agreed. It's not. We've had other cases of insurance fraud, but this... He shook his head. I'm preparing a sworn affidavit detailing the unauthorized use of your information and the forged signatures. You'll have it within the hour. Relief washed through me. Finally, professional validation of what I'd known in my gut. Thank you, doctor. I can't tell you what this means. There's more. He reached into his desk drawer. This came through our system this morning. It was flagged because the date didn't match our records. The document he handed me looked official, heavy paper with a notary seal in the corner. My heart stopped when I read the title. Voluntary Acknowledgement of Paternity. This was predated to last month, Dr. Keene explained quietly. The signature matches the forged one on our forms. And the notary, he pointed to the stamp, Rebecca Martinez. She works with Logan Pike at Meridian Insurance. The room tilted slightly. I gripped the edge of his desk, steadying myself. They'd thought of everything. The form would have been waiting at the hospital, ready for processing the moment the baby was born. A neat trap, perfectly laid. They already planned the handoff, I whispered, more to myself than to Dr. Keene. The form trembled in my hands. Not from anger this time, but from the sheer calculated nature of it all. Every step had been planned, every contingency covered. If I hadn't started digging when I did, 3 days later, I sat with Miles in his office, surrounded by stacks of meticulously organized evidence. The morning light filtered through Venetian blinds, casting stripes across color-coded binders that held our case. "Run through your testimony one more time," Miles said, leaning back in his chair. The leather creaked softly, reminding me of Sunday afternoons at my father's desk when he'd teach me about responsibility and keeping your word. I took a deep breath. I discovered the pregnancy through a tablet notification. The timeline didn't match our intimacy. I gathered evidence systematically: bank records, hotel charges, rideshare receipts. When confronted, Ariana admitted Logan Pike was the father. "Good. Keep that steady tone in court." Miles flipped through a blue binder. "Judge Porter appreciates methodical presentations, no emotional outbursts. I remember your advice. The truth doesn't need drama." The courthouse corridors felt longer than usual that afternoon. Our footsteps echoed against marble floors as we made our way to Family Court C. My hands were steady carrying our evidence boxes. I'd practiced this walk in my mind 100 times. Inside, Judge Porter's presence commanded attention from the bench. His silver hair caught the fluorescent light as he reviewed preliminary documents. When Ariana entered with her lawyer, I kept my eyes forward, though I could sense her performance beginning. Right on cue, she dabbed at her eyes with a tissue. "Your Honor," her voice quavered, "my husband abandoned me when I needed him most. All I wanted was to keep our family together." Her lawyer jumped in. "Mrs. Pike is experiencing a high-risk pregnancy, Your Honor. The stress of her husband's accusations—" "Your Honor," Miles interrupted smoothly, "we have evidence that will clarify the situation." He gestured to me. I approached the bench with our first binder. "These are bank statements and hotel receipts documenting meetings between my wife and Logan Pike." My voice remained steady, professional. "The dates align with the conception timeline." Ariana's lawyer stood. "Objection. These records are circumstantial." "I'd like to hear this evidence," Judge Porter said firmly, adjusting his reading glasses. I continued, producing a recorder. "This is my wife stating that Logan Pike is the father." We played the clip. Ariana's voice filled the courtroom. "Logan isn't ready to be a dad." Her lawyer tried again. "Your Honor, this recording, and this," I pressed on, presenting Dr. Keene's affidavit, "documents the unauthorized use of my insurance and forged signatures at the prenatal clinic." Judge Porter studied each document carefully, his expression unchanging. When I placed the predated acknowledgement of paternity on his bench, his eyebrows lifted slightly. "The notary stamp belongs to Rebecca Martinez," I explained, "who works with Logan Pike. This form was prepared in advance, Your Honor, to trap me into legal paternity." The courtroom fell silent. Judge Porter leaned forward, scanning the fraudulent document with intense focus. After what felt like hours, he looked up. "This evidence," he said slowly, "changes everything." The silence that followed held the weight of truth finally exposed. Judge Porter cleared his throat, commanding attention from everyone in the courtroom. My heart pounded against my ribs, but I kept my expression neutral, years of financial presentation serving me well in this moment. Having reviewed all evidence presented, Judge Porter began, his voice carrying the weight of authority. "This court finds clear and convincing proof of deliberate deception." He adjusted his reading glasses, scanning the documents one final time. The prenatal timeline, financial records, and most significantly, the unauthorized use of Mr. Sanders' information demonstrate a coordinated attempt to circumvent proper legal process. From the corner of my eye, I saw Ariana's shoulders begin to shake. Her lawyer placed a steadying hand on her arm. "Therefore," Judge Porter continued, "this court rules as follows. First, there shall be no presumption of paternity regarding the unborn child. Mr. Sanders bears no legal responsibility for support or care." He paused, letting the words settle. "Second, regarding the misuse of marital funds, Mrs. Pike shall pay restitution in the amount of $12,843, representing unauthorized expenses and hotel charges." The sound of Ariana's first sob cut through the courtroom. I kept my eyes forward, focused on Judge Porter's stern expression. "Finally, this court enters a formal finding of fraud against Mrs. Pike, for the attempted forgery of medical documents and the predated acknowledgement of paternity. This finding will be recorded with the family court system. He set down his papers with finality. The separation agreement is approved as submitted. We're adjourned. The gavel crack echoed through my chest. Relief flooded my system, but exhaustion followed close behind. Months of gathering evidence, sleepless nights analyzing documents, and the constant strain of living under the same roof with Ariana's manipulation. It all caught up to me in that moment. As we gathered our materials, Ariana's crying grew louder, more desperate. I shouldered my laptop bag ready to leave when she rushed around the table toward me. "Bronson, please." She grabbed at my sleeve, tears streaming down her face. "You can't do this to us, to our family. I made a mistake, but we can still—" I pulled my arm away without a word, turning instead to Miles, who stepped between us with practiced ease. "Mrs. Pike," Miles said firmly, "any further communication needs to go through counsel." Her makeup-streaked face crumpled. "You're heartless," she spat at me. "Both of you. This isn't justice. It's cruelty." Miles guided me toward the door. "The law and your conscience are clear," he said quietly. "You did the right thing." The drive home passed in a blur. I climbed the stairs to my apartment one last time. The empty moving boxes I'd stored in my car now tucked under my arm. Standing in the doorway, I felt the weight of endings press against my chest. I set the first box down in the bedroom and began methodically removing my clothes from the closet. Each item represented a memory: the blue shirt from our first date, the sweater from last Christmas, the tie I wore to sign our mortgage. But as I placed them carefully in boxes, I realized these weren't just reminders of what I'd lost. They were pieces of who I'd been before the betrayal, who I'd remain after. The bedroom grew quieter with each empty hanger, each packed box. Looking around at the half-empty space, the question of my next chapter hung in the silence, waiting to be answered. 3 weeks after the court ruling, I stood in the empty living room of my new rental house. The late afternoon sun streamed through bare windows, casting long shadows across the hardwood floors. It wasn't much, just 2 bedrooms and a modest yard, but it was mine. Clean, honest, free from deception. My phone buzzed again. Ariana's name lit up the screen for the 20th time this week. I watched it fade to black, then tucked it back in my pocket. Some messages don't deserve responses. The movers had left hours ago, placing my carefully labeled boxes in their designated rooms. I'd kept things simple: my desk, a comfortable chair, essential kitchen items, and my bed. The rest I'd donated or stored, shedding the weight of shared possessions like old skin. "Remember how your grandfather used to say the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago, but the second best time is today?" Those words echoed as I lifted the cedar sapling from my truck bed. The nursery had wrapped its roots carefully in burlap, protecting the promise of growth within. The backyard wasn't large, but it caught good light, enough to nurture something new. I'd chosen the spot carefully, centered in the view from my home office window, where I could watch it grow through the seasons. Kneeling in the fresh-turned soil, I breathed in the earthy scent that reminded me of childhood afternoons in my father's garden, learning that patience and care yield the strongest roots. My hands worked methodically, digging the hole to proper depth. Each shovelful of dirt felt like an affirmation. I choose what grows in my life now. The cedar's young trunk stood barely taller than me as I knelt, but its presence already commanded respect. These trees can live for centuries, their rings marking both harsh winters and abundant springs. Settling the sapling into place, I pressed soil firmly around its base. The work was simple, honest, everything my marriage hadn't been. No hidden agendas, no manipulation, just the straightforward exchange between care given and growth received. Sunlight filtered through the cedar's feathery branches, casting delicate shadows that danced across my arms. In that moment, the weight of the past months, the evidence gathering, the confrontations, the court battles, seemed to settle into perspective. I hadn't just won a legal victory, I'd reclaimed my right to build a life anchored in truth. Standing back, I dusted off my knees and studied the young tree. Its slight sway in the breeze spoke of resilience, of the quiet strength in starting over. The yard around me lay open with possibility, a blank canvas waiting for whatever I chose to cultivate. The words rose naturally, spoken not in anger or bitterness, but with the calm certainty of a lesson hard learned. Love without truth, I said to the quiet yard, is a contract I won't sign. My voice carried only as far as the cedar's branches, but that was enough. Some declarations aren't meant for others' ears. They're promises we make to ourselves, marking the moment we choose truth over comfort, growth over stagnation, self-respect over false peace.